We're going to do a multiple VLAN setup today, and we're just going to have a rack of switches, and we're going to provide trunk links for them, and we're going to use Cisco's router on a stick example. So basically I've created 7 different subnets, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups, and we want to use one Class C network but 7 subnets. So if you think about that, a normal Class C is CIDR 24. To provide the necessary number of subnets and hosts per subnet, of the 5 combinations, we need to use 4 bits for subnetting and 4 bits for hosts. So if we use our formula 2 to the power of x minus 2, that means we get 14 subnets and 14 hosts per subnet. So that's what we want to use. And if we're using 4 bits, that means our subnet mask is 240, and that means our block value is 16. So remember, your networks are based on the block value, so all our networks are going to be based on multiples of 16. Now we'll have to configure routing to provide communication from one VLAN to another. Remember that a VLAN is it's a separate broadcast domain. So each of these groups of hosts, as we place them into different VLANs and connect them to our switches, are going to be in separate broadcast domains, and they won't be able to communicate with each other without first going through a router. But that's okay, because in the router on a stick example, we can just use one router, and we can provide routing for all those subnets through one single interface. We won't actually configure fast Ethernet 00, but we'll use sub-interfaces on this interface here. Alright, so again, let's just kind of go through and examine the IP addressing. Now, I'm saving the first network, 16, for the administrative VLAN. Remember, the administrative VLAN is VLAN 1. So I'm going to put all my switches in the administrative VLAN, VLAN 1. And then if I go through, we can look at the IP addressing on each network. So like, for instance, 3 and 6 over here, they're Cylons, and they're going to be in network 32. So that means the first valid IP would be 33. That's the gateway on the router when I do the sub interface. And then of course 34 and 35 would be their IPs. Well then, again, our block 16, so add 16, and then our next network, we'd go from 32 to 48. And that's where we have our humans. So this will be in the Cylons VLAN, and this next one will be in the humans VLAN. And if I look at the configuration, since we're network 48, first valid IP is 49, so that'll be the gateway on the router, and then the first IP I'll use is going to be 50. And our subnet mask is always going to be 255, 255, 255, 240, and the last byte or octet. All of these will be linked together in one single Class C network. So a gateway of 49, and then 50, 51, 52, that's the next network. Okay, so VLAN 1 is the administrative VLAN, VLAN 2 is this network, our subnet, VLAN 3 is this subnet, and then our VLAN 4 would be this next subnet over here, the hybrids. And again, going up and based on the block value of 16 and multiples, then this would be the 64 network, which means the first valid IP would be 65, so 65 is our gateway, and we'll start counting up from there, 66. Okay, so these guys there are then, let me move that back there. So these guys will be in the 4th VLAN. The 5th VLAN will have Yoda and Han Solo. And again, the block value of 16, we're going up by multiples of 16. So we're moving from network 64 to network 80. The first valid IP would be 81. And so if I pull this up here, then notice that our gateway is 81. You don't have to, but remember, it's traditional to use the lowest IP as your default gateway for a subnet or for a network. Okay, so VLAN 1 is the administrative VLAN, VLAN 2, VLAN 3, VLAN 4, VLAN 5. Here's VLAN 6 over here, VLAN 7 and VLAN 8. So VLAN 6, again, we were on the 80 network, now we're on the 96 network, which means the first valid IP would be 97, which is the gateway, the lowest, and then we'll start numbering at 98, 99, and now we have Sarah Connor and John Connor, and we go from the 96 network to the 112 network, which again means our first valid IP would be 113, and traditionally use the lowest, so that's the gateway. So then their IPs are 114 and 115. And then finally over here, we have the T1000 and Cameron, which are, again, that'll be VLAN 8, and it's the next multiple of 16 up. So that was 112, this is 128. Our first valid IP would be 129, and that's our gateway, and then we start numbering at 130 and 131. Okay, so that's just kind of the breakdown of our network. Now we're going to need to configure physical trunking links to connect all of our switches. Remember that depending on whether it port's a trunk port or an access port determines the kind of traffic that goes through it. If it's an access port, then only traffic from one VLAN travels through it, and it doesn't utilize tagging. If it's a trunk port, all the VLAN traffic can go through it, unless you explicitly tell a certain VLAN not to send traffic through it. And of course tagging takes place. So we'll have to connect all our switches with trunk links, and we'll have to provide a trunk link to our router where we'll set up encapsulation, 8021Q encapsulation, use the encapsulation space .1Q, and then we'll have to match the VLANs number by number, so 1 through 8 on our router interface. So let's go ahead and just hook everything up real quick. So this is going to be our chief VTP server, and we'll set up our VTP domain. This is our main switch here, and these are all 2950s, so they're all fast Ethernet, 100 megabit per second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take port 12 here, and later we'll go in and we'll configure it as a trunk port. But I'm going to connect it, and I'm going to go to the router, and I'm going to connect it to fast Ethernet port 00. Okay? And the way all of these are going to go all the way down, I'm going to start at port 1, so like 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, depending on how many hosts they are, so you know how it's hooked up, how it's configured. So later when we go to set our access ports up, we'll know which ports we need to select to put all of our hosts in the proper VLAN, or the appropriate VLAN. So we have a trunk link, or at least later we'll specify it as a trunk port to the router. Now let's set up the rest of the links. So I'm going to need F11 here connecting to F12 here. And then I'm going to need F11 here connecting to F12 here, and F11 here. Each of these routers will have basically 2 trunk links. And I'm just going all the way down, F11 to F12 here, and F11 to F12 here, and F11, and of course on the end router all we need is just one link there to F12. Okay, so each of these routers are gonna this is our rack, right? Our rack of layer 3 switches for our VLANs, and here's our router. So all this would be in one rack, but maybe I could put that up there if I guess I have enough room, barely have enough room there. So I'll try to get everything looking like it's in a rack. And then we just need to go in and actually configure our switching, and when we get done with that, our router. Okay, we're going to go in on each of our switches now and configure passwords, a global secret password, and we're going to do console and VTY, virtual terminal. And we want to configure the IP addressing on the administrative VLAN. Remember, we have to select that on the 2950 and several other models of switches. And we're just going to configure those options first, and then we'll go back in the next step and create our VLANs on the first switch, set up our VTP domain and our VTP clients and servers. So let's go ahead and do the IP addressing, the passwording, the host name, that configuration now. And I'm going to log on to the first switch, and here I am in user mode. I'm going to use enable to go to privilege mode, and I'm going to use config T to go into global configuration mode. And the first thing I'm going to modify is the host name, and I'm just going to call this the Pegasus. And the next thing I want to do is select the administrative VLAN with int VLAN 1. I'm going to specify an IP address, and let's do 199.207. Remember this, this is VLAN 1, so it's going to be based on network 16. 199.207.10, and our network is 16. Our first file out IP would be 17, which, if we follow tradition, that should be the lowest IP in the network. So 17 is reserved for the router. So that means we'll have to start out our switches at 18. Okay, and our subnet mask is class C with the last byte or octet subnetted by 4 bits, which gives us a mask of 240. We'll set a descriptive string. Connection to network 16 is what we will call it, which is also our administrative VLAN. There we go. I spelled it. Let's exit out and let's do our default gateway as well. Now this won't work until we get our routing set up, but we'll go ahead and configure it on our switches. 207 and 10 and 17. Remember, that was our first usable IP address. Okay, so we've got our IP addressing set up. We got our host name changed or modified. And let's just do some passwords. So we'll make Kiwi our password. And it should be at least 4 characters. And you don't really want to do more than 8. But let's just do console. Kiwi, and let's do virtual terminal, which is telnet, and every switch is different, every router is different. The 2800 series, I think it's like 0 and the last line is 1180. The 2900 series is like 0 and the last line is 1114. The Catalyst 1900 switch is like 0 and I believe 4, and this should be 0 and 15. Okay, so VTY 0 and 15. You can always use the little question mark, select help if you want, but this will be like our telnet password. Okay, and then I'm just going to leave line configuration. And the last thing I'm going to do is, before we actually go in and set up our VLANs and configure our ports and whatnot, is set up a banner message. Welcome to the Pegasus, and get my delimiter character. Okay, and this switch is done, so I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here, and I just want to do a copy, run start. We'll save everything there, and let's move on to our other switches. And we'll maybe drag things out a bit so we can see the IP addressing a little bit better. There we go. Now we're going to hop onto our next switch and let's do the same. So let's go to global mode, and in global mode, let's go ahead and change our Galactica, and let's go ahead and give it an IP. Remember, on the higher switches, you've got to select the administrative VLAN. It's not like the 1900 where you can just assign an IP. It's going to be an IP command, IP address, and 199.207.10, and we're following our next valid IP is going to be 19 here. Number 17 is the gateway. So 240, 192.168.10.19, and then connection to network 16. And of course, I could type out 192.168.10.16, but it's just easier to do that. Let's do the default gateway, and 199.207.10 and 17. Our lowest IP is our default gateway, and now let's just configure our passwords. And let's do, actually let's do our global one too. And let's do our console. And let's do our virtual terminal telnet password. And finally, we're just going to do a banner message. Message of the day, MOTD, use the pipe symbol as our delimiter. Of course, we'd say something like, unauthorized access on this router will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, to make it useful, but let's keep it short and simple and sweet just to make an example. So everything's set there, and I'm just going to Control Z down to privilege mode this time, and we do a copy run start. We'll save everything. So again, our host name, our IP, and our passwords. We just have to just do our remaining switches. Well, let's get onto our third switch, and I'll try to make a little bit of room there. And just again, have to kind of drag him over. Okay, so now on our third one, same thing. I want to go to privilege mode, config T to global configuration mode. And let's modify the host name. And I never spell this right, but VALKYRIE. Valkyrie, something like that. Yeah, okay, we'll call it the Valkyrie. Let's select the administrator VLAN, which is VLAN 1. The only one we can really assign an IP address to is that administrator VLAN, which is 1 by default. 207.10, and remember our next valid IP is going to be 20 in this example. And our subnet mask is first 3 octets, normal class C, and the last octet subnetting 4 bits, so it's 240. Let's do our default gateway. IP default, ooh boy, I'm telling you. I even swapped keyboards, and this keyboard sticks too. IP default, it's crazy. Can't get a decent keyboard to save my life. 207 and 10 and 17. Okay, and let's go ahead and configure our password here, and console and login and let's go ahead and message of the day banner and VALK, I never spell this right, VALKYRIE. I probably still spell it wrong, but oh well, who cares? It's done, been decided. That's it, that's our host name. Okay, and let's go ahead and exit and save everything there. Okay, so now we have our third switch configured. We are running out of space here, folks. Let me move these guys over some. Had everything kind of clumped over there anyway. Okay. And let's move this switch up here. Alright, so we've done 3 switches. Let's do our 4th one. I'm going to call this one. Go to privilege mode. And we'll start using Star Trek names, I guess. Constellation, the Constellation class, I don't know. VLAN 1 and 109.207.10. Our next valid IP, guys, is going to be 21, right? So we got 18, 19, 20, so 21. And our subnet mask and the last octet, remember, it was 240. Configuration network 16 with our description, and our default gateway 199.207.10.17, and let's do our secret and our console password, specify login, and VTY015, and exit line configuration mode, do a banner message, and our delimiter character, and Control Z under privilege mode, and alright, and there's our first switch. Basic configuration. We still gotta, like I said, our VTP and we're gonna do all kinds of things still. Configure our ports and whatnot. But before we do that, we should host name them and IP them and password them, right? Alright, let's do our next switch. And we'll call this one the Defiant. If you guys are DS9 fans, I don't know. Let's go global. I think that's how you spell that. I don't know. And let's select our administrative VLAN. Configure an IP address 199. 207.10, and our next available IP is 22. Up to 14 hosts per subnet, so we're good there. Let's use our subnet mask. Subnet last 4 bits gives us a value of 240. Description. This is network 16, and it is the administrative VLAN 1. Okay, and let's set our IP default gateway. And 199.207.10 and 17 was our gateway for network 16. Alright, and let's do enable secret Kiwi, and let's select our lines, not lien, but line. We'll do our console Kiwi, specify login, virtual terminal or VTY015 for telnet, Kiwi, and login and exit. Message of the day, banner message. Ooh, left off the R there. MOTD, add a pipe symbol, or whatever delimiter character you can. I just hardly ever use the pipe unless I'm programming, so it's safe to use that as a delimiter. If you welcome to the, again, you'd say unauthorized users will be prosecuted here, but we'll leave it short and simple and to the point. So that's everything now that we have for our 5th switch, and I'm just going to copy, run start. Oops. Let me exit out and copy, run start. Let me go back down to privilege mode, and let's do the next switch. Yeah, let's move Sarah Connor and John Connor. Come with me if you want to live. No. Let's move Sarah and John Connor over there, and our next switch, that was a Defiant. And I don't know, Dataless, I don't know what that's from, but hey, I'm running out of names here. Alright, let's go to privilege mode, and obviously, professionally, we should say building 1, building 2, building 3, and I can't talk and type at the same time, but that's alright. So in global configuration mode, let's give it a host name, but we want to have fun, so we'll do science fiction. D-A-E-D-A-L-U-S, Dataless, is that how you spell it? I hope so. And same thing, let's give it an IP on the administrative VLAN 1. IP address 199.207.10. And what's our next available IP? 23 in this instance. And 255.255.255.240, subnetting 4 bits. Let's give it a descriptive string. Connection to network 16. Administrative VLAN 1, and exit, set the default gateway, IP default gateway, which is 199.207.10, and the lowest IP in network 16, which valid IP, which is 17. And now let's go ahead and same thing, global password and console password. Oops, didn't want that extra character in there. Boy, that would have thrown me. And let's do virtual terminal 015 VTY 015 for our telnet password. And login and exit and banner. Message of the day and a pipe symbol, and welcome to the, what are we, D-A-E-D-A-L-U-S. Welcome to the Dataless and pipe symbol. And now a copy, run, start. Okay, we got that switch set. Let's move Sarah Connor and John Connor over here. Sarah Connor, come with me if you want to live. John Connor. And let's do our last switch now. And we'll leave the T1000 in camera here. Man, well, she was hot for a cyborg, wouldn't she? Yeah, I miss Friday nights, man. BSG and Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles all on the same night. Those were awesome days. The golden days. Now there's nothing for a nerd to watch. I'm so sad. Where have all the robots gone? All the androids and the anyway, okay, let's go ahead and do our last switch. So let's do enable and go to privilege mode and config T to go to global configuration mode. And let's set our host name to, I have no idea, how about Copernicus, if that's how you spell his name. Now we'll start doing astronomers for some reason. Administrator VLAN 1 to set the IP address. And 199.207.10. And our next valid IP, guys, is what? 24, right? From all the ones that we've used. 255 and 240. We're good there because we know that with Black 16 we got at least 14 subnets and 14 hosts per subnet, so we're good. We'll just call this connection to network 16 and administrator VLAN 1. Set the default gateway. IP default gateway 199.207.10 and 17 with our gateway address, and let's do our secret Kiwi, and let's do line console 0. We'll set our console password to Kiwi, specify login, v2y015 for virtual terminal, telnet password Kiwi, and login and exit, and banner message of the day, and welcome to Copernicus. All unauthorized users will be tased. Whatever, prosecuted. Okay, and exit and copy run start. And we're done, at least for that part of things. Next, we've got to set up our VLANs.